So good evening and welcome everyone. Thank you all for coming tonight to listen to Anyika Onuora, Olympic medalist and female black elite athlete. My name is Wendy Coxall and I'm a lecturer in the social sciences here at Liverpool Hope University. And we're delighted to have Anyika here with us today for our Black History Month event series. So just some quick housekeeping. It's going to be an hour this evening, so we hope to finish by 8 o'clock, but there will be an opportunity to ask some questions at the end, so please do put them in the chat as we go along. We are going to be recording the webinar as well, so it will hopefully, or it should be available later for sharing, certainly as a resource in Liverpool Hope and on our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for coming, Anyika. I think you do need perhaps no introduction, but I'm going to introduce you and do my best to remember all of these medals here, because it is quite a phenomenal career that you have had in track and field as a sprinter. And I was just watching, as I said to you before, some of the videos today, and it's just breathtaking what you've achieved. So I'm going to read them because I do correct me if I make any mistakes, because it truly needs celebrating just how fantastic a career you've had and what an amazing athlete you are, and remembering that you are a female black elite athlete as well. So in 2014, and the medals just flow, Anyika won gold in the 4x100 metre relay in the European Athletics Championship. She's competed in 100 and 200 metres, first of all, and then stepped it up. And this is what is quite amazing, you know, not just sticking to one distance, but stepping it up to the 400 metres because she's such a phenomenal athlete. Winning the bronze in the 4x400 metre relay in 2015 in the World Championships, followed by 2016, the gold in the 4x400 metre relay, and the bronze in the individual 400 metres. So, you know, first amazing moment for you as an individual athlete there. And weeks later, the real pinnacle, the real cherry on the top was the bronze medal at the Rio Olympics in the 4x400 metre relay. And it brought tears to my eyes actually watching it again today. Oh. What a phenomenal race it really was. So I hope I've not missed anything, Anyika.
No, I think that's all.
Did I do all right? Fantastic.
Amazing.
So I think I really truly want to celebrate all of that, but that's not the reason we're here today. And as much as I would love to talk to you more about sport and your successes, today we're here to listen to you talk about another different, very important and painful story about the adversities and challenges that you have faced as a female black athlete, and particularly in the women's British team. And that's what is at the heart of Black History Month, hearing these stories, histories, black histories, female black histories that are so rarely told in public and heard. And for me, that is what, you know, I'm celebrating today, and hope that we can create for you a space in which you can share those histories and your history, and that we can learn from that and share that history too, so that others can learn from it as well. So thank you, Anyika, for being here today. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I guess I want to begin at the beginning of your life, actually, and the family history, and your family that is quite phenomenal, actually, because as you are this incredible athlete, you come from the Onuoras, this amazing sporting family. And I wanted to ask you and maybe invite you to talk a little bit more about not only the sporting family, but a huge anti-racist family and the contributions that your individual family members, including yourself, has made to anti-racism, which needs recognising and celebrating in my view too. But I guess I wanted to invite you to talk a little bit about your family history, the role that your family has played in your life and you growing up, and what contribution that's had in terms of you becoming this amazing female Black athlete as well.
Thank you so much. Like, that intro was enough for me to just be like, oh. Thank you for the introduction, Wendy. It's honestly I'm honored to be here tonight and just being able to talk about my journey, my success, the highs and lows, and different things that I've encountered. So what better way to do it than for Hope University tonight? So thank you again. So in regards to your first question, my family they are pretty phenomenal. So I pretty much owe a lot of my success to my mum and dad, but also my siblings. I've always said, like, I think we discussed it years ago. Can you imagine us having a reality TV show, The Onuoras? Because the level of success that you have to, like, even attain in this family is just, you have to step it up consistently time after time. And my family definitely kept me on my toes. You know, my brother's EFEM, my brother EFEM, he was, a professional footballer. So he was like the first sporting prowess we had in the family. And, watching him on TV growing up, I'm like, wow, you get to actually see people on TV who, they're your siblings. It's weird, like, just seeing them behind a TV screen, like growing up in the 90s and stuff. So watching him during his career was amazing. And then obviously my brother Emmy, who played a huge part in my upbringing from when I was young to teenage years to adult life. Like, he's always on hand to give me so much sound advice. And obviously he's like the first author in the family as well with his book Pitch Black. So yeah, I'm inspired by all my siblings, not just the sporting and the academic ones, but even the ones who aren't on TV or the non-famous ones. Like, yeah, it's even now when I see my siblings, my nephews and nieces coming through, and just seeing them, moving into different careers and different professions. Yeah, no one's a slouch in my family. You can't afford to be a slouch. But I when I say I owe a lot of my success to my family, I do. Like, my mum and dad were always key and pivotal to my upbringing. They taught me so much. My mum still teaches me so much to this day. My father, who's unfortunately not with us at the moment, everything that he taught me from a young girl, as a young girl, I carry it into normal day-to-day life now. And it makes me fortunate to know that, I had, and I still kind of have, his words of wisdom instilled in me every single day, because a lot of it plays a part in how I perceive life, and trying to find my purpose. And even now I've moved on from track and field, I'm trying to find my purpose in other areas and other walks of life. So yeah, I owe a lot of that to my family. And yeah, there's never a dull moment when we're all together. So yeah, it's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So tell me then, what was it like growing up in your family in Liverpool and in Britain? Because you were born in, was it 84? So mid-80s?
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
What was it like growing up in that era, in those decades in Liverpool and in Britain, and sense of maybe your family and the sense of belonging that you had, or the adversities that you had faced growing up in Liverpool and in Britain during that time? Yeah,
so we grew up in the south end of Liverpool. That's where I was born, in the south end of Liverpool. So like Wayward Cheese, Smithdown Road Way, Allerton Way. So what I loved about Liverpool, and even to this day, when people hear my voice and like, oh my gosh, are you from Liverpool? Scousers are like the best people. And we truly are. Like, I like, there's nothing, I honestly just come from the best city ever. I can't imagine not being from Liverpool. I can't imagine not being a Scouser. What I've always loved about being from Liverpool and growing up in Liverpool is there's always a sense of community. Like, people always want to help each other. People go out of the way to help each other. Whereas, when you go to London or further down south, the further south you go, the people are less like that. But I guess with Scousers and being from Liverpool, I guess there's definitely a sense of trying to help each other, you know, like I said, community and all of that. So growing up, when I was young, family life was cool. Like, I was always playing with my siblings. There's a bit of an age gap between my elder siblings, so Aoife and Emmy. So there's like 15, maybe 20 years between us. So we have different mums. So my mum and dad, we all lived in a family house together with my other three siblings. And yeah, family life was cool. We just used to always drive each other mad, drove our parents mad. But yeah, life was definitely enjoyable. I think when it comes to identity and race, I didn't really see it until probably I was around maybe 8 or 10. When you go to school and when you're in primary school, excuse me, when you're in primary school, someone made a comment about like either my skin color or my hair or something like that, and then they said, "Oh yeah, that's only for black girls." Some boy made a comment. He's like, "Yeah, that's only for black girls, so we can't use that," or something like that. And you know, it just felt that I was just kind of taken aback by it, because it's not that I didn't see color, because I always saw color, but it's the first time someone actually said it to me to my face. And the fact that this child, who was no more than 8 or 9, said it so confidently, it just made me much more aware, I guess, from a young age. And you know, in those moments, you do feel a sense of sadness. But you know, you kind of carry on with life. Everything was fine. But then when we moved, so we moved to Dingle, and Dingle in the 90s was just difficult, very difficult area. We moved house from Wavertree to Dingle, and we were there for about 3-4 years, and we encountered racist abuse pretty much every week. And it wasn't so much towards like the locals in the area, like normal people, like grown adults. It wasn't that. Excuse me, I got a cough. So it wasn't that. It was more the kids, so teenage kids who were like similar age to you, like a group of boys who just wanted to cause havoc. And because we were the only black family within the area, we were always the target. So it was like, first of all, you know, we weren't allowed to play out anymore. We weren't allowed to play out. Then we get you know, eggs would get smashed through the window, or bricks would come through the window. Then there'd be stuff put through the letterbox. Then we got robbed. Then the car got stolen. So the car got stolen, and they basically put like a firebomb in it. So it was getting like really, really dangerous to even live and exist in that area. So we had to move. But yeah, that was a very like dangerous time. It was so dangerous because we were all kids at that point. Like I was around, how old was I? Between 11 and maybe 14, something like that. So it was very difficult to navigate life when you kind of having to deal with this constant racist abuse from kids. You know, it's not like grown adults who know better, but even teenage kids, teenage boys, they know better, but they just didn't care. They just wanted to cause havoc all the time. So that was difficult to deal with, because I know it's not everyone, and I know Liverpool gets a bad rap, you know, for whatever reason. But yeah, that was hard to deal with, and I think that's the first time I really realised that, oh, you are black, and people are always going to be able to point it out. But what I loved about my parents and just family life is my mum and dad always told us, unfortunately, you're going to have to work twice as hard, but once you're or 10 times as hard to even get like, you know, close to your white counterparts. But that shouldn't deter you from what it is that you want to do in life. So that's why when it came to like, that's why my work ethic is so strong, because of what my parents instilled from me from day one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just, I mean, hearing you say that, you know, it's shocking, and I shouldn't, you know, in fact, I heard on the radio today a very similar story from the novelist Bernadette Evaristo, who is similarly from Nigerian background, grew up in London though, but talking about exactly the same level of violence, growing up. But again, I think, you're quite a bit younger than her, and this just shows, that continuity of racist violence and abuse that the likes of me, it doesn't come into my world. It's not part of what I would ever experience growing up because of the colour of my skin, and that is simply it. So, I mean, thank you for sharing that, because it's pretty shocking to hear, but really important to hear and to know that has been your experience. And it's an important story and history to be told as well. I wonder, and I do want to come on to ask you what was it like in a second being part of a Black woman in the British team, but first I just wanted to ask you if there was something about sport in that sense, and the reasons maybe that you got into sport. Was that a safe space for you when you were younger, or was it not about that at all? Were there other reasons why you got into athletics?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily think it was a safe space, so to speak, just because of the years that we encountered the racism. It wasn't like a crossover from, becoming, a young athlete. It actually happened. I started, joining the Liverpool Harriers much like a year or two later, so it didn't coincide with that. But I can see why, obviously, it would be that would be the case. But yeah, that wasn't it at the time. So.
Mm-hmm. But it's your drive once you've got into athletics that you're clearly saying, wasn't it? You're going to have to work 10 times as hard because you're Black in order to achieve, and that's what you're saying has contributed to a lot of your determination, I guess,
Yeah.
and drive to achieve.
No, it has definitely. And so I know not everyone necessarily sees it that way, but I think if you're a person of color, and sometimes, everyone's upbringing is different, but sometimes in this, being brought up in Britain, I think it's fair to say, especially after what we've seen over the past 18 months, like, people are starting to see that we're not all treated differently. We're not all treated equally. Sorry, we are different. People see us as different. So I understood why my parents always told me from a young age, you're going to have to work 10 times as hard, because sometimes society is just unkind to people of colour. But it's just down to you and how you navigate it and not get bogged down by it. So that was the route that I chose to take. But getting into professional sport definitely wasn't an easy one, especially when you do come from a strict Nigerian household. When it comes to traditions and family values, and I wasn't allowed to go into professional sport until I got my degree, because my father was like, there was no way I'm going to let a daughter of mine, participate in professional sport when there's no, there's nothing to fall back on. So he made me very much aware of that, and he said, as soon as you get your degree, you can do what you want. So I did. So it was a win-win.
And you got, was it a degree in economics?
I did. So it was, yeah, your rivals.
But I mean, but that in itself, and I should have mentioned that at the beginning, because that is, to have achieved what you've achieved, and along the way I've done a degree too, and this is, you've got the degree, you've earned that degree, and it's not something that's been given to you as a as a recognition because you're an athlete. It's something that you've earned at the university, and I guess now we're on your family again. I think that's fascinating to me, that your father was the one who was so keen, and for you being a woman, I think that is something that to be celebrated. He clearly wanted to see his daughter do well, and that isn't always the story for many women, and I would say perhaps in my case too, it's not been something that was encouraged. So I think that's amazing to hear that kind of support that you've had from your family, and to achieve in every way, actually, is massive. So moving on then to talk about being in the British team and what that was like for you as a Black woman, what the challenges were. You've got this amazing person on this drive that you brought with you. So what was it like to be part of the British team? And can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So one thing I will say is I love growing up in Liverpool, but I think it's fair to say that I definitely had identity struggles from a young age. So, when you're growing up in a city that's, not everyone looks like you when it's predominantly just one race. It's hard to just kind of navigate in different spaces, especially when you're a teenager. You're trying to, I went to all girls school and the majority of the school was white, but I had amazing friends. That's not to take anything away from it. And I didn't even actually suffer any racism in school. My school's actually quite good with all of that stuff. So it's very, very, very multicultural. Just my particular school year, it was, there was not that many Black girls. So that made it difficult because you've got your Nigerian values and you've got Nigerian cultures. And then when you go to your friend's house, for tea and dinner and hanging out, you're trying to do each other's hair. And obviously I wear braids where there's like white hair is like straight, isn't it? It's like straight. Mm-hmm. So, just learning about like skin tone, and when you're putting makeup on, you want to put makeup on with your friends and stuff. So that was a struggle. So I say all of that to say, because there is a point. When I first came on the British team, because majority of the sprinters were from London, I automatically gravitated to them because it felt like I was with people who could identify with me on the same things. So it was young Black girls who were the same age as me. So I got my first GB call up when I was 16, I believe. And we just talk about so many different things that were just related to the things that we were going through at the time, to do with identity, race, hair, how people always try to pick apart like Black girls' hair, style, like skin tone, skin features, all of those things. So I think that was one of the reasons why I enjoyed being around, the British athletes so much. So whenever there was an opportunity to go like weekends away, we had relay camps every couple of months, either in Bath or University of Bath or Cardiff, London, every so often. I always used to just have that, because in Liverpool, when I trained at Wavertree, I was like the only Black girl, I think, at the time. There was Diane Allegreen, who was amazing. She was senior British athlete, but obviously we were different age group. So I needed someone who I could speak to on my level. So being on the British team and being around those types of Black girls, it was everything to me. It helped me navigate pretty much my career and also life at the same time. And then as I got older, being a Black woman on the British team, yeah, you definitely do encounter some things that aren't nice, some things that aren't, are not so nice. But what I've always loved, even since I've retired, what I loved about, those moments, being in those moments, is that I was able to continue to have those shared experiences, talking with other British Black girls on the team. So there wasn't necessarily a sense of you feeling isolated. It wasn't always a case where we could go to management and talk about, anything to do with racism, because I think people are naive to think that because athletics is a mixed sport, that people or Black people don't encounter racism, because we do. There's been times where I've traveled to Eastern Europe to compete and they've stopped you at border control and you're held in a room and they're asking you, what are you doing here? I'm here to compete. And then you're here, you're bringing up, they're like, no, what are you really doing here? And you literally have to either show them your documentation. I have to call my agent from the UK or from Holland, where she is, and just have her speak to someone in the office to say, yes, she's here for the competition. Or you have to call the meet director to tell them like why you're in the country. Certain things like that. Whereas if it was a white person, can you say you'd encounter the same thing? Probably not. So yeah, it's just those little things like that. But what was really hard, so why I say having, those core group of women or Black athletes in general. Just having those people around me at those times, is we were able to sit there and have our shared experiences and talk about them together. Because when you're going away to compete, you're going there to focus solely on a race, so on your race, your performance on the track. So now, before you've even got to the track, you're having to encounter this awful incident where you're being chastised, literally because you're a different skin color to everyone else. They don't believe who you say you are. And then to add salt to the wound, you don't even know who to go to speak to about it, like in regards to like senior management, because everyone around you is white. So that's not their lived experience. That's not something that they've been able to encounter. So even though I didn't have that, what I love now is that we are starting to see change within the organization. So like now we've got a Black head coach. So I would like to think, for any athlete who's gone through that experience of, having issues of passport control or has encountered any racist abuse in the sport, because it does happen, they're able to go to someone like Christian Malcolm and tell him and have him, have these open discussions, because I'm sure he's encountered racism in the sport as well. So just being able to have those, just being open and being able to navigate the discussion in a way that's comfortable enough for you to feel like, you want to be in a safe space, because all you want to do is focus on your performance. You don't want to have to focus on, all the outside stuff, including racism, unfortunately.
I mean, it's awful, and I'm sorry you've had to go through all of that. I mean, what you're clearly describing, it sounds, it is institutionalized racism, and it's that silence, that comes with it. And to have to be those private spaces that you're describing, where you and the other Black athletes, I mean, it's great that you were able to support each other, but the fact that you weren't able to challenge it, and there was no debate, no questioning beyond, yourselves, is shocking. And it's a story that absolutely needs telling. It's not something I would know about, or I think many people probably do know about, what goes on, for you as athletes and the experiences that you've had, because that's not what we see on the television screens at all. But I think what you're highlighting as well with the role of like Christian Malcolm is the importance of having Black role models, and in those positions in management, not only to be the role models, but in those positions where, not him single-handedly, but that can promote change. But it takes a whole institutional transformation.
Yeah, definitely.
So maybe while we're on that, is perhaps I can ask you to kind of talk to me a bit more about, you've mentioned it already, but Black Lives Matter, and I think what the impact that's had, what the significance is, you think, of the Black Lives Matter movement, and what we've seen, obviously, since the murder of George Floyd in the US, and the rise, actually, of this, the Black Lives Matter movement. Just be interested to hear, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so obviously, it was such a tragic moment, to see all of that unfold. I think it took the killing of, not just George Floyd, but Breonna and Aubrey as well, who were murdered at the hands of the police, for people to actually, wake up and realize, like, these are senseless killings, like these lives have been taken away, all because of the color of someone's skin. And I think I can't say whether it would still have had the same impact if it wasn't for COVID. And I say that because, when people were protesting and stuff, I would see certain people, not to put a dampener on it, this is just purely my opinion, but I think there was definitely an uprise of it. But, what I was scared of is the fact that I didn't want it to be a case of, performative action. So go and protest, right? Go to the streets of Liverpool or London or Bristol or wherever, and that's great. But what are you doing afterwards? If you're a non-person of color, like, how are you becoming an ally to this day? Like, I'm not necessarily talking about you, donating and stuff, but what are the conversations that you're having? Like, who are you encountering on a day-to-day basis? Do you still hold that bit of, unconscious bias that you're much more aware of now, or are you just going back to your normal day-to-day life? Because like some of us are actually having to live that experience, you know. You know, there was a lot of brands, a lot of companies, a lot of organizations who were ready to, you know, talk about, oh, we want to see change, and everyone was screaming about D&I, diversity and inclusion was such a buzzword over the past, you know, year or so. But what are people doing? How are you creating an impact? You know, how are you helping other people of colour lead the charge? You know, some people were saying like, you know, there's a lot of people who are actually in denial about it, just because they say, you know, well, you're only Black people or people of colour. No, Black people specifically are only 3% in the UK. And I'm like, okay, but that's still a huge contribution to society that we're making. When you talk about like Windrush, you know, and you know, all the NHS itself has been built on the backs of people of colour, both Black and Asian doctors, nurses, all these people who come to the country, so who are British but don't necessarily feel British because of how we are. And like you mentioned before, a lot of it is actually institutionalized. So everything's just in America, in the US, everything's open. So they'll call you the N-word to your face. Whereas you don't say that here, but they'll be subtle about it. It's all that subtle racism, you know. And it's from the whole Meghan Markle situation, why she gets so much heat, why is she always on the front cover of every newspaper. It's the way the Euro 2020 football final was played out with the England match, because as a Black person, once those penalties were being taken, especially with the Black athletes, the Black football players taking them, if we were to lose this game, you already know what's going to play out. You already know. So I actually remember turning the TV off, because unless we won, because I knew what was going to happen afterwards. And it was so heartbreaking to see, because people don't understand, like, no, it's not everyone who's racist or who's saying all these things on social media, but it is a society issue. Like, it's just in depth in society. Like, racism isn't going away anywhere, but there are changes that we can make as individuals, as human beings. We can have these open conversations and just be much more aware of them than to spout nonsense on social media. I think, have I answered your question?
Yeah, I mean, there's loads. I mean, I think, you know, I suppose as somebody, you know, who I like to call myself an anti-racist. I try to be an anti-racist, and I try most certainly to be an ally, but having, you know, written and researched around anti-racism too, I guess, you know, one of the important things that I've noticed as well that you drew out there is the distinction as well between the US and Britain. And in Britain, it is very much a silent topic. We don't talk about race, and you know, I think it's very different in that sense. I mean, it's not to say that racism doesn't exist in both places, but it exists in a different form and in a different way, and it's the product of our own histories and distinct histories in Britain and the US. But I think it's what you were describing are those what we might call microaggressions. And you know, the questions that you're asking, what you know, what are people doing? What are the likes of me doing? You know, with the end of, we say, the change and of you know, the dying down, let's say, of the protests following obviously what happened and was triggered with the murder of George Floyd, and it is, how do we keep that momentum going? How do we keep this alive? How do we continue the fight? And I think it's a really important and salient point that you're making about not falling into the trap or becoming complicit once again in that silence that ends up being denial and you know, conforming actually and normalizing racism in a way that it should never ever be normalized and should be challenged. So you know, I think it's fascinating what you have to say and your thoughts on you know, where we're up to now in a sense, and following you know, the Black Lives Matter, the momentum that was gained following the death and murder of George Floyd. I want to come to you now, though, Anyika, about your book, because we haven't mentioned it yet. My Hidden Race. But, you know, I kind of wait to read it very much indeed. And I know it's not out till March 2022. So you might be limited in some ways to the extent to which you can talk about what's in it. But I did want to ask you more about the book itself, what you can tell us, and also about, there's a reference on the back where you talk about the Me Too movement and your support for that. So I didn't know whether that was something, when talking about the book, that you could expand on a little bit, what that means to you and what your views are on that as well.
Yeah, so yes, I literally cannot believe I'm writing my memoir. It's just so weird. It's like my autobiography on my life up until the present, well, yeah, it's present day-ish. So yeah, it's just an amazing opportunity because it's been a dream of mine to just write a book. And I think, you know, when I retired from the sport, it was something I always thought about, even before retirement. Every time I encountered a different type of challenge, that was just away from the norm, be it good, be it bad, or whatever. I'm just like, no one would believe me if I told them that this happened. No one would believe me if I told them that this happened. So the best way for me to do it is just for me to put it in a book, and then all the information's out there, you know. So yeah, it's just, My Hidden Race is some of the topics we've obviously touched on. It's obviously learning about race and identity, being an athlete, professional sportswoman, being a Black woman, being British, you know, what it means to me also, with my Nigerian heritage as well. It talks about the different challenges that I faced both on and off the track. There's some sad moments, there's some funny moments, there's some explosive stories. And yeah, it's just very, very moving book. And it took a lot for me to even speak about some of the things that I'm writing, because I haven't told anyone about certain things that have happened in the book, in my life rather. So yeah, just the fact that I'm being open, as I am an open book, pun intended, with everything that I'm talking about. And you know, it isn't just about me. I'm not just writing a book for the sake of writing a book. It's because I also want to be able to help other people by telling my story and being open and being honest. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if, like, you're a young Black girl coming up in the sport and you don't know how to navigate life. It doesn't matter if you're a middle-aged white woman who lives in, you know, down south or in a cottage and you've got 4 kids to raise or whatever. I literally want everyone to pick up my book and just be like, oh my gosh, like, that is so me. You know, I remember that. I remember this. And yeah, just some of the stories that people don't know about and don't know about in sport neither, because athletics is a big sport, but some people aren't always aware about the things that go on behind the scenes. So I'll also be talking about that as well. And yes, there will be a topic of discussion around the Me Too movement. I can't say too much or give it away for obvious reasons, but yeah, it's just a very, very important topic for me to discuss and just give my opinion, my take, and just being open about just the whole movement itself.
Well, I can't wait is you know, what I can say, and I think I certainly owe a lot of what I've learned to the Black feminist literature. And I think, you know, I'm sure when you're talking about the Me Too movement, there is that intersection that is going to certainly come out from what you're suggesting. And you know, it's going to be important lessons that and stories for us to read, as well as much as we can hear your stories in our conversation now. I'm aware that we have been talking for a while. I don't know if there are any questions. I don't know how many people have been able to join us this evening. I can't see any at the moment. There is a question here. Okay. 1 second. So it's a question from Rona O'Brien saying, thank you so much for sharing some of your traumatic experiences of racism and sexism with us, Anyika, and your book sounds fascinating. I wondered if you could talk more about autobiographical writing as a medium for addressing trauma, and whether for you it was an alternative form of therapy. Thank you, Rona, for that question. I don't know how you want to answer that, Anyika, but
that's a great question.
I'm sure you can give it a go.
Thanks so much, Rona. I really appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy the book when it comes out as well. I would definitely say 1000%. This was basically a way for me to get everything out. Yeah, it was releasing all the different bits of trauma that I've experienced in my life and in my career. At times it was extremely difficult. I would definitely say that. You know, like I said, there's some funny moments as well that I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. That was such, that was so funny. And then I look back at the stuff and things that weren't as funny, and then it was, you don't just feel sad about it, but you literally sit there and cry about those moments because, without giving too much away, but there was certain parts of the book where I tell that story, and I don't recognize that same person, because the Anyika, from, I don't know, 20 years ago or 10 years ago is completely different to the Anyika today. But again, the Anyika, I mean, I'm talking about myself in the third person, so just bear with me. But yeah, the Anyika today has had to go through, the Anyika back then had to go through all of that to get to the person I am today. So although some of those experiences were extremely traumatic, it also brought some meaning and understanding in terms of my purpose and how I want to go about my life and navigate it. So again, going through those traumas, I'm writing this book, it's given me a sense of purpose. So I found my purpose in writing this book, and in doing so, I want to be able to help other people. I want to be able to help other young athletes or other young girls in sport, or, men, women, whoever. It doesn't matter who you are. But yeah, I want to be able to tell my story. And, even when I had a list of pros and cons as to why I decided to write this book, and there was more pros than there were cons. There was definitely more pros. And I look at, previous sports books, especially in Britain, and there's like no sports books hardly written by any Black British women in sport. I think the last one was Anyika, the former Arsenal and England player. And then before that, there really wasn't that many. Maybe Denise Lewis, I had her book. She was an inspiration to me. Maybe Kelly Holmes. Maybe Nicola Adams had a book for sure. But, what separate? I want to ask myself, what separates my story from everyone else's? I know everyone's lived and shared experiences are different, but what's going to separate my story from everyone else's sports book? What's going to give people a reason to pick the book up and just be, just in awe of what they're reading? And I think the book will speak for itself. So hopefully everyone will want to do that, pick it up and have a good read.
So we've got another thank you for the question, Rona and Anyika, for, obviously your response. So another couple of questions here, one from Neil asking, do you think the situation around racism in the UK is improving? And have you seen any positive changes, or is there still far too much work to do here?
Good question. There's definitely always work to do. I wouldn't necessarily say people have taken their foot off the gas, but I definitely would say, so when I said before about the Black Lives Matter movement being seen as performative action, that is what I meant. If you look at a year ago, so, when George Floyd was murdered, and, there was an uprising, there was a global uprising. Everyone wanted to get out in the street to march and do this and do that. And then when it came to Black History Month, all these brands and all these companies, organizations wanted to change the whole stance. There was all this whole diversity and inclusion. We want to make it all inclusive. they were given, you know, loads of Black people the opportunities. And the problem is that it's a year later, everything's just gone quiet. You know, there's no consistency whatsoever. There really isn't. So I know friends who work in different industries who get, you know, invited to events and get invited to speak on these big platforms. And it's like a year later, these same organizations, not only do they not acknowledge Black Lives Matter, Black History Month, but they also refuse to do it a year later because they come up with another excuse. Now, would you have the same thought process if it was, as an example, Women's International Month? You know, because that's you're not talking about race, you're talking about gender. You want to celebrate all women. So having the opportunity to speak on these platforms is great. Or is it a case where, oh, we don't want to do it this year because, you know, it's just racism, you know, all lives matter, you know, coming up with all those ridiculous terms and stuff. So when I say about like performative action, that is exactly what I mean. And also, I don't just want it to be a case of, you know, let's just do something during Black History Month now, just because it's like 1 month of the year. Let's be consistent with it. You know, let's do something every month. Let's do something in February. Let's do something in the summer. Be consistent about all these, you know, objectives that you want to change within the workplace, within your organization, within business, within society. You know, let's be consistent with it, because there has been a lot of pushback from people, not everyone, but it's also down to us as a society to be open about having these discussions. And, you know, at least, like I said before, try and be an ally, you know, try and help someone else have these open conversations so you are able to learn about other people of color, different cultures, different values. Because that we are told we're trying to integrate society. And also, without me getting on my soapbox, I also think what I was going to say before is the way the government have also dealt with the situation in regards to race hasn't helped British society at all. So, so the way they were slow to respond when it came to Black Lives Matter last year, the way the government was saying, no, well, you know, let's protect the statues. So you'd rather value statues than human life. You know, that says a lot about society. And then people who vote for these people are obviously inclined to deal, you know, not everyone, I will say not everyone, but some people are inclined to think the exact same way, because these are the people who's supposed to lead the country. So it's like, what type of example are you setting? You know, what are you setting for the future of this country? What are you setting for the, you know, the next generation? So I think it all kind of plays into British society, into how we deal with racism as a whole.
Thank you. Well said, Anyika. Just say, not on your soapbox at all. Please take the soapbox and speak, because I think what you said was incredibly eloquent and incredibly important. We think about history, you know, whose histories are being told here and whose histories matter and whose lives matter and whose lives matter more, maybe. So I've sorry, abusing my position as chair here. Jill Schofield, thank you for your question. She says, thank you for sharing your story, and I look forward to learning more when I get to read your book. I'm wondering if you think that it's any easier now for Black girls to get into elite sports. Has anything changed substantially?
Oh, good question. Has anything changed? Oh, what's changed since I'm trying to think? The fact that I can't even think of one, it probably means that nothing's changed. No, I do think things have changed. I would definitely say, so there's a campaign that they had for I think it's Sport England had This Girl Can. I think Sport England actually have an initiative currently at the moment, which they started, I think, prior to the Black Lives Matter movement, where they are trying to increase the number of Black and Asian girls to participate in sport. Because we all know being a woman and being a sportswoman is so hard. But, you know, young girls tend to kind of, I think the drop-off rate is between 16 and 18, 19, just because, you know, you want to do normal things. Not everyone wants to take up sports and stuff. It's not deemed as cool, you know. So it's a lot harder. But I think now you've got so many different opportunities now, for sure. So there's the former England cricketer Ebony. Oh, I can't remember her surname. I think she's the first Black woman to play for England, the English cricket team. Ebony Bryant, or I can't remember her name. Apologies, but I'm sure she's on Google. Anyway, Ebony has started the ACE program, where she basically goes into marginalised communities in and around London and other parts of the UK, and she's basically set up an academy alongside the EBC, and they basically try to get young girls and young boys into playing these sports that aren't, you know, it's not a football or a rugby, you know. They actively do that, and because they've got a program in place, it helps to keep these kids on, not just on the straight and narrow, but it also teaches them as a young person about discipline, about confidence, about teamwork, leadership. That's what I learned when I was young. So I think it's important that we you know, have these things as well. And also locally, Tasha Jonas, the boxer, GB boxer, and I think her cousin Nikita Harris, I think, the England football player, they actually have their so every so often during half term, they set up like a sporting academy for like young Black girls as well, within the area. So within like the Liverpool, Toxteth, Princess Park area, because Tasha's obviously a boxer. She wants to see more young Black girls come up in the sport. And Nikita Paris, I think her name is. So she's also got that as well, because even though I think she plays in France now, but she also plays for England. She tries to do a lot in the community as well. So I think it is a lot easier. And then me, myself, I also do a lot of mentoring and coaching and leadership roles within sport. And, you know, I do go actively out of my way to help young Black girls as much, because I didn't necessarily have that. You know, I didn't necessarily have a go-to person I could talk to and have regular access to. Whereas I think now definitely young Black girls do have an abundance of different areas that you can tap into, where you can seek these people out and just have a conversation with them. Because sometimes people will drop me an email or they'll send me a DM, or, you know, they'll contact me through this person, that person. And I'm more than happy to help, because, you know, I went through it, so I wouldn't want any young Black girl to go through the exact same thing.
It sounds like there's been, you know, quite significant changes actually, but it's also interesting to hear you talk about role models and actually not having role models yourself when in athletics, by the sounds of it. And I suppose that surprises me in a way, because I'm thinking, oh, surely there were, but clearly there wasn't for you. But I wonder, maybe if I could just ask you the question, how do you feel, and do you think of yourself as a role model for you know, the younger young Black girls, particularly coming into sports now? Is that something you see as maybe not just your legacy, but a kind of something going forward that you kind of you see that you have a clear role and I don't know, responsibility maybe to those the younger generations coming along?
I would definitely think so. I did actually have a couple of role models. I don't know if I mentioned them. So there was like globally, there was Denise Lewis, because she was like Olympic champion, world silver medalist. She was just amazing. And it's important for you to identify with people who look like you. You know, in a sea of faces where you see people who don't look like you, it's important that, you know, I saw Denise Lewis in myself. You know, she was the Olympic champion. I was like a schoolgirl when she was watching, you know, when she won Olympic gold in Sydney. And I was like, wow, imagine what it's like to become an Olympian. And I did it 3 times over. And now I sit on a committee with Denise Lewis for the athlete advisory board for the Commonwealth Games, which still blows my mind, because she's just like so regular. But she's awesome. She's just so lovely. And then closer to home, There was another athlete called Diane Green. She was a former British hurdler, so she trained at Wavertree as well at the Wavertree Athletic Centre, and she was on the British team, and she was on TV all the time. And you know, we actually went to the same school, Archbishop Blanche, so I broke all her school records. And she was like, I was like in awe of her when she used to come in and present our awards. So the fact that I go back to Archbishop Blanche, and you know, I do anything for the school, because the school would just, they played such a huge part in how I like kind of navigated my life, not just as a young girl, but also as an athlete. Like I'm so grateful for the support I got from the school. So anytime they ask me to come back and do this and do that, I'm always like, yes, I'm there. Where do you want me to be? And it's important because, you know, those girls, especially the young Black ones, they need to see people like me on, you know, just being able to tell the story where I have encountered some things that haven't been great and have been unkind, and you know, just talking about my own shared lived experience, and just being open about it and being honest. And you know, these girls may not have to deal with these things, and hopefully they won't. But hopefully, you know, after hearing my advice, they'll be able to navigate it in a different way and realize, like, okay, yeah, this is how it is, and this is how I'm going to proceed with it moving forward. So. Although being a role model, it comes with a lot of expectation. It comes with a lot of expectation, because I honestly don't see myself. I kind of see myself as a role model, but I don't. If you know what I mean. I think you know what I mean. I'm just a very down to earth, regular person. And I hope that people are able, like young girls, can come to me and just ask a question, and yeah, I'll be able to help, give advice, and give them as much support as possible.
Well, I don't think you're an ordinary regular person, Anyika. I think you and your family and the Onuoras are quite phenomenal. And I would like to think that you being here today, talking at Liverpool Hope in our Black History Month event series, means that you are a role model for all of the Black students here at Liverpool Hope and beyond as well. And I'm quite sure that you are and will continue to be, because phenomenal, you know, not only an incredible athlete with an amazing list of medals that I can't, you know, and a multiple Olympian, but you know, you've got your degree as well. And I think that's really something to celebrate. You know, what a career, what a woman. It has been honestly wonderful talking to you. I don't know if there's any quick last questions in the chat, but I think we have answered most of them. And I do very much hope that people listen to this webinar and, you know, hear your voice, your history, your experiences, because it's been wonderful for me to be able to talk to you today. And certainly I've learned a lot from you. And I can't wait to read your book, and I hope that lots of other people go out and buy it as well. So out, My Hidden Race in March 2022.
Yeah, right? 31st. Let me double check before my publishers.
Right, to get the details right.
Yeah, it's March, 31st of March 2022, which is like 6 or so months away. So yeah, it's gonna be exciting. I'm probably gonna be doing bits of TV work, hopefully, in the lead up to the book and promoting it. So hopefully people get so sick of my face and hear my voice that they're going to be forced to buy the book. But yeah, it's exciting. The pre-orders coming in the next couple of weeks, so hopefully I will be able to everyone will be able to pre-order soon. But yeah, it's exciting.
Wonderful. Look forward to it. Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to talk to you today.
Thank you.
Phenomenal. There we go. That's what we've had the last comments there. So just from feedback from the audience. So thank you all. And I will, is this where I need to call Neil to end the webinar?
Oh, you're